I'm David Caputo, Professor of Political Science at Pace University, and I'm very excited to welcome you to the first lecture in our Presidential Election 2016 MOOC, Massive Open Online Course. Hopefully we're being joined by hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are interested in learning more about the nominating process for the 2016 presidential election. This particular MOOC will also be followed up in the fall, beginning in September, with a MOOC dealing with the actual campaign. For this lecture, I wanted to do several things. First, I want to explain the organization and the way these lectures will be organized. I have a very interesting dilemma. A lot is going on as we speak, and this is being taped in late January. A lot is going on in terms of the candidates, in terms of where they stand and so forth. So I'll try to begin each lecture with some discussion about what is happening. Then as we get into the actual primaries and caucuses, I will focus on those particular events, explain what is involved, and explain the importance of them. Then the next lecture after that particular primary or caucus, I'll try to explain what happened and the significance of it going forward. Now all of this is going to unfold relatively rapidly. And I'll come back to that point in just a few minutes. So it's important as you go through the lectures, and if I have anything else for you to look at, that you keep up to date, because there's nothing worse than reading about the Iowa caucuses, which are on February 1st. If you're reading about them in April, you've missed a good deal. So try to keep up. We'll be posting these particular lectures every 3 to 5 days, and that way you'll have a chance to keep up. The other thing I should say is that if you have questions, we'll have a way for you to raise them with me via an email, and have that for you for the next lecture. Okay, for today, I thought we'd do something a little different. I think everyone is excited about the process. It's about to begin. We're just a few days away from the February 1st Iowa caucuses, but what we really need to be thinking about is a broader view. So I want to give you a couple dates to think about. Is 11/8. Now, that should be clear to you what 11/8 is, November the 8th. That is Election Day 2016. Late, last possible date it could be, but nonetheless, 11/8. Now, we can go back and look at some other dates. Okay, so this is really what we're culminating in and what this whole process is about. So as we begin now in early February to go through the nominating process, there are a couple other dates you should keep in mind. And that is July the 25th to the 28th. And that is those are the dates for the Democratic Nominating Convention in Philadelphia. Okay? And 7/18 to 7/21 are the dates for the Republican Convention in Cleveland, Ohio. Now you might say, gee, these seem earlier than usual. Yes, they are earlier than usual. Usually they've been having them in mid to late August, sometime into September. But remember another event that's happening this summer, and that's the Olympics. And the Olympics out of Brazil, the parties did not want to have to compete with that. So those are the reasons for that. Now, the interesting thing about those particular dates are that the nominating process traditionally has been over well before the election, well before the nominating conventions. And what the nominating conventions are, an attempt by both parties and their presidential candidates to advance and to organize the themes that they're going to structure for the upcoming campaign. We do know, however, that in this particular year, and we'll be discussing this throughout the semester, there is a small but very real chance that one or both parties could have the nomination not decided by the time of the convention, in which case the convention takes on even more drama. The other important thing that happens at the convention is the announcement of the vice presidential candidate. Even though it may be known weeks in advance till it's formally done, one never knows for sure. So those are dates to keep in mind. Another date to keep in mind, set of dates to keep in mind, are two dates in March, March 1st and March 15th. Those dates are extremely important because it is quite possible that in both parties, by the 15th of March, we'll know with some certainty who the likely candidate is likely to be. Okay? Even though we're very early in the process. Process goes to June 7th in California. But by March 15th, we may know or have a very good idea as to who the nominees are likely to be. And we'll be discussing the importance of March 1st and March 15th in the second lecture for the MOOC. All right, now another set of dates that are important for you, and dates that you probably are somewhat aware of. It would be February 27th, the South Carolina primary for the Democrats. February 23rd, Nevada caucuses for the Republicans and the Democrats. I'm sorry, for the, and February 20th, South Carolina primaries. February 20th, the Nevada caucuses for the Democrats. The Republicans have their Nevada caucuses on the 23rd. February 9th, the first primary. First primary is New Hampshire, both Republican and Democratic primaries. And February 1st, the Iowa caucuses, the Republicans and Democrats. Okay? So if we reverse the order now and talk for just a minute about the February 1st Iowa caucuses, probably one of the most important from a media and a public relations standpoint for any candidate. Although in many cases, candidates who win the Iowa caucuses, especially on the Republican side, do not go on to win the nomination. Okay? In addition, for the Democrats, the process and the way they do theirs, and we'll be talking about them both shortly, the way they do their nominating process in the Iowa caucuses is much more intense. The Republicans have simply a straw ballot in each of the precincts, and we'll talk about that. So what this calendar means is that from February to June 7th, we have a very elongated process. And that process takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, which we'll be talking about how it's financed, and it takes a lot of organization. So while a candidate might be concentrating in Iowa in January, they may have to be thinking about the March 15th primaries. So the fact that these are spread out as they are means that, number one, there are many local rules involved, okay, state rules. And there's quite a variation from state to state. We'll be explaining those so that you understand the difference between an open and closed primary, between a caucus and a primary. Okay? Second thing to remember is that this process is designed by the political parties themselves. The National Committee set the various dates, and the states accommodate them in terms of whatever primary or caucus legislation that they may have to do. Okay? So this is largely, the nominating process in many ways is controlled by the national committees. Okay? And that means that, for instance, for the Republicans, they've made major changes since 2012 because they were concerned that the process was too long in 2012, and that by drawing it out, it meant that their eventual nominee, Governor Romney, both had to endure a longer period of time in campaigning, but secondly, had less time to try to consolidate his message and get ready for the fall. So they've tried to shorten their process. It remains to be seen if they'll be successful or not. We'll come back and talk more about that. So I wanted to give you a big picture at this point in terms of what the overall process looks like. So for many of you, you know the process really began the moment Barack Obama was reelected in 2012. Candidates began to organize, candidates began to go to Iowa, to other states, and so forth. Things have been very busy for the past year, year and a half in terms of Iowa and New Hampshire. Okay? So keep in mind, long process, even if the nominee is known, if the nominee has enough delegates by the 15th of March or shortly thereafter, the process still continues because they're selecting delegates to go to the national convention, their national party convention in most cases. Okay? Finally, my last comment in this lecture is this is a very complicated process. You'll find that the press like to oversimplify it. And they tend to cover most of the nominating process, as they'll cover the general election, as what we call in political science jargon, horse race. Okay? They're trying to tell you who's ahead, who's behind, who's gaining, who's losing. So if you've ever been to a racetrack and listened to the call of a race, you'll know that someone breaks early, someone gets caught, someone gets caught at the end. This is what their type of coverage. This is not what I'm going to be doing. I will be doing some analysis similar to that, but most of the analysis will be trying to take a step back and give you a broader perspective as to what's happening and why it's happening. All right, so I'll conclude with that, and we'll see you at the next lecture.